Last thing I'm going to start playing with, and it's surprisingly complicated, is the steering column. Now, if you remember from my video that I did before, I essentially am done with all this stuff up here. I got that all refurbished. But I still have to attach it. So this piece 34 here, this clamp, and that piece there bolted up into this, which is underneath the dash, and then the transition through the firewall. There's a piece of rubber and a cap there. There's the shear block back here. All that stuff's got to get lined up and put down. So I may not have all of the hardware. I don't think I have the hardware that clamps these two things together. The steering knuckle I do have. So I may get stuck at certain points or may cheat a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and put this as much far together as I can. So these are the clamps that hold it to the back of the clamp that's in the dash. That's that round guy there, and that clamps up into the back of that one. And these use felt, just felt spacers, I guess they are. And you can see these are obviously original. You can get a kit. I got mine from the Roadster factory that's got replacement felt. So this is the circular felt. You can see how much thicker it is. That's the other piece of felt. Now there is holes. You can kind of see it there. There's another slot there that allows you to screw it down. I'm going to go ahead and just try to kind of manhandle a little bit. I don't expect it to be super easy, but we'll see what happens. So I mentioned that tack life lamp was pretty slick, where you could remove the two lamps themselves, and then you could just set them somewhere. So I know it's really bright, but this is the first time that I've tried it. And yes, it is pretty slick. I wanted to show you this real quick. This is part of the steering wheel assembly that goes underneath the dash. Obviously it's in the crinkle coat. Now the one here is the one that I painted. The one over here, I think it's from the black car. I'm not sure exactly what car it came from. But I'll zoom in a little bit and you can kind of see the differences in the crinkle coat. And the differences are pretty much none. So that's that VHT stuff, and as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty much, as far as the texture goes, that's pretty close to being factory original. If you're a crinkle coat guy like I am and really like the look of that stuff, you can rest assured that the VHT stuff is going to be really close or identical to factory. So this bracket here is where the steering column is going to mount to. These 2 points here that are connect, and that's what this guy goes on to, and that'll show up there. It uses really thick washers and some various hardware. And then the one all the way in the back here, it's already captive nutted, which is convenient. So these will go in. Now the washers, you got lock washers, and then the big heavy duty flat washers that goes on the outside. And the bracket goes on the inside of this piece, and that's captive nuts as well. But the big fat washers and the lock washer go on the outside. There's quite a bit of, there's slots in it, if you can't see that allow quite a bit of adjustment here. I'm not going to put in anything too tight. Alright, so up next is this bracket, which goes in the back here, and these already have captive nuts, so it's just a matter of attaching that up. This has got the new pieces of felt where the steering shaft's going to go through here, and then this one. And again, I think this is just for vibration, to not transmit it necessarily from the road to you. So who says that the Spitfire isn't full of creature comforts? And this bracket goes on the outside of this. Alright, so there's the adjustment block, and this allows the steering wheel to go forward to aft into the compartment or out, so you can adjust the height a little bit. And then up here I've got the rubber seal and all that, and again I don't have the screws for this, so this won't be getting tightened down now, but I think everything else is ready to go in. The only thing I'm not positive of is upside down, right side up, but I'll figure that out when it goes in. Alright, so I've already figured out that I'm a dork, because I can't obviously get all these pieces in without you know, with the clamps, with this part and stuff on. So I'm going to stop real quick, take this stuff back apart, and do it the right way. you can obviously totally rotate this thing over here, but there's the wire, which you really can't see on camera too well right now, but the wire guide that prevents the wires from kind of falling on your lap, that definitely goes to the bottom. So should be good to go here. I'll go ahead and slide the steering wheel down. Alright, so that's staying conveniently for me. You can see in this one there's a little cutout for that, the wire notch, so I know that that mounts up on this side. This felt here is pretty thick. It's not really fitting around the tube at all without a lot of force. So I'm not sure I'll be able to get that started. But what I'm going to do now is tighten up these in here. Let me get the thing up off in the air, so to speak. I got a little bit of work here to figure all this stuff out, and day's getting a little long in the tooth for me, so I'm going to call it and continue on with this same type of project next time. A couple lessons learned from the first time I did it. One, you want to get this wire clamp. That's for the vanity cover for the wires. Just get that set up because it's painful to get under. This clamp here, which is the lower clamp, you want to get that on there, especially with the new felt, makes it very difficult. And then this guy here, which essentially keeps the two inner and the outer steering columns connected. You can kind of see where they're connected there in that little slot. So this portion is just a flat screw, and that goes in and clamps these two together. Unfortunately, you can't put the steering knuckle on because it won't fit through the hole in the firewall. So that's a little bit of a pain in the rear because it's pretty tight. But otherwise, I'm going to try to slide this in and see how far I get, and we'll see how it goes. So there's the steering knuckle, and as you can see, it gets tight in there under the upright into the turret, and it's not on all the way on the steering box yet, and neither side is tightened, but it is convenient because it kind of holds the steering column for you there, so you can see, I think, where it's coming through the firewall and kind of resting there. So now I'm going to put that little rubber piece in. That's with a spire nut and two self-tapping screws, and then see if I can get it suspended just so I don't put all the weight right there onto the firewall. Got most of this in. That bracket's on. That was definitely much easier. This bracket is kind of started here, but it's not in that well, and that's okay. And then I got that screwed in. So now what I'm looking at is I got to engage that steering knuckle down there a little bit better onto the steering box. Just a little bit more knurled stuff going down. And also, all I did was just take a hammer and tap that down a little bit, and essentially had to take the wheel off because I started to lose the steering shaft, or the shaft there. But now this whole entire plastic piece can still go down into the car a little bit more. So I'm just kind of alternating back and forth until hopefully at some point the thing bottoms out. I guess hopefully I won't have to come backwards because that looks like it's going to be painful to do. But that's working on that real quick. So the steering column's bottomed out. The black column, not the inner actual column. And the way that I know that is because that block right there is not going to move at all, and the washer that goes on that is right up against it. So that's good, and that looks like there's more than enough sticking out there to give me the steering wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and put the steering wheel on and then tap down on this and see how much of the steering shaft that I lose, and see how that gets down there. I still don't have the proper thread protrusion there, but I think I still have enough ways to go there not to worry too much about that. And then down here, I'm pretty happy with the way that's almost fully engaged. If worse comes to worse, I can pull the steering wheel, the steering shaft out of the upper portion of the knuckle there. That pretty much bottomed out in that, so I definitely have some wiggle room here. So steering wheel's kind of sort of in. Let's see if it actually turns the wheels. I'm sure it will. And there it is. Holy cow. That's been about 4 years since I could do that. But everything, with the exception of this guy right here, which you can't see, that guy right there, are pretty tight. And I'm not going to worry about that right now. If you look back there, it's got that clamp bracket that keeps the inner and the outer steering shafts connected. And then right next to that is the gas pedal,
You can see that's a little marked up, and what's happening is because I don't have the gas pedal connected to the linkage, it's sticking way up and it's hitting that bracket and scratching it up. So I'm going to put the pin in real quick here. Obviously this is the throttle shaft, and then the linkage here to go underneath the carbs, and then the bracket kind of comes up. I'll show you that. Obviously the carburetors have been removed, and there's a little locking pin in here, a little split, they're not split pin, but a little push pin, whatever those things are properly called. And I'm going to knock that in and then put the carbs back on and get this lined up so that I quit running into my gas pedal.
Nothing really to that, just use the drip punch and knock that thing in. So now what's going to happen is when this gets connected up, that's going to lift the whole assembly up, which is going to translate to the brake, or excuse me, the gas pedal getting a little closer to the bulkhead, and that's going to get it out of the way of the steering rod. By the way, if you're going to remove the carbs like I did and not remove them at the manifold, or not remove the manifold from the block but remove the carbs from the manifold, there's nothing that keeps the carburetors together, and the linkage is rather loose, and you can see that my little linkage here fell out of where it's supposed to be in, so now you have to take the whole thing back off to fix that, and unfortunately I didn't catch it until everything was tight. So just important safety tip. So now with that linkage connected, you can see that it's about an inch or so below where that bracket is, so now I'm not running into it. So I'll have to get some paint back in there and tape some stuff off and clean that up. So now as far as the steering column goes, really all I've got left to do is this piece up here. I'm going to get that tightened down. Got the steering knuckle tightened down, buried in there. It's a pain in the rear to get at, but I could get at it. And steering wheel's not tight yet, but watch this. Here's the turn signal. Going to turn to the right, tick tock, tick tock. Turn the car to the right, and it returns. I didn't even try to do that. It did it all by itself. It's so magical. The steering column is installed. The adjustment brackets, this guy here and the one in the back, they're snug, but they're not tight. I'm not sure how that's going to fit up. I want to get the seat in and stuff like that before I look at starting to adjust those. The steering wheel's gotten tight. That's a 1 1/16 inch nut in there. So obviously it's big. The other thing is it's a rather tight fit. So I had initially gotten like an impact socket, and that was just too thick to get in there, but I have a regular socket, 1/2 inch drive. My set goes up to 1.5 inches or something like that, and that fit in there just fine. Now that the steering column's tight, I'm going to revisit the fuel pipe back here. I did ask on my favorite forum what they thought about the S-curve, and some people said they put fuel filters back here, and I kind of said, well, I'm just going to keep the fuel filter where the factory had it. Turns out the factory didn't have a fuel filter. There is a screen mesh in the fuel pump, and that was the only fuel filter. So that was, one of the guys educated me on that, so that was kind of interesting. But I don't want a sediment trap there. I didn't think about that. I don't intend to put a fuel filter back there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that pipe back off, and I'm just going to try to come right out of the tank and make a straight run down, which is obviously going to lengthen the pipe and all that kind of stuff. So I'll have to play with this for a little bit, but that's I think that's going to be a better choice for me. It mostly falls as it goes, but more importantly, it cleaned up the bottom a little bit, and I don't have the lines kind of overlapping each other. The biggest thing is I hooked the steering wheel up incorrectly, and back here there's a aluminum bushing, I guess you could call it, and in between the aluminum bushing and the locking thing here should be a nylon or a Teflon washer, and I put it in the other way. I put the Teflon washer inside of the bushing, so unfortunately I had to take the whole steering column off to fix that, but I didn't want to bore you with that.